Well done, and you're here with us, so that's priorities for you, right?
Well, yes.
All right, we have the crew here. We have Liz, Steve, Steiner, Marlin, Mr. Malay, Mr. Loikitz, Toth, Diana, and Dr. Levine. We have to change the roll call here, Chris, by the way. Sorry.
Understood.
Nice to see you, Jamie. Thanks for joining.
Hi, nice to see you. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. We have the members. We have, let's see, we have our expert. We have our professionals, rather. We have Andy. There's Andy. Hey, Andy. Mr. Sheehan. Are we expecting anyone else, Chris? Or sorry, we're in the webinar format, so it's kind of, we're flying blind here.
We have everybody except Bart's team, which we will get to when he starts his direct case again. Bart, real quick, I'm on A12 exhibit wise. Is that where you are as well?
Yes.
Okay.
All right, then. Oh, you're good? Oh, my internet's a little choppy tonight, so let's see if I can hang in there. All right, let's kick it off. All right, good evening and welcome to the April 5th, 2021 meeting of the City of Summit Zoning Board of Adjustment. My name is Stephen Spur and I am chairman of the Summit Zoning Board. In accordance with New Jersey Statute 10:4-10, adequate notice of this meeting has been provided to a newspaper of record and has been posted here in City Hall. This meeting is a judicial proceeding. Any questions or comments must be limited to the issues that are relevant to what the board may legally consider in reaching a decision, and a quorum appropriate to a judicial hearing must be maintained at all times. This meeting is being conducted virtually via video conferencing in lieu of meeting in the council chamber at Summit City Hall, Summit, New Jersey. This meeting is being live streamed to the city's YouTube page. In addition, members of the public can view and participate in the meeting by following the link provided on the agenda. Members of the public may also submit written comments and questions to the zoning board secretary in advance of the meeting to be read aloud during the meeting. Such written comments shall not be considered testimonial and shall not be considered by the board in its determination on any application. Individuals wishing to provide testimony as to any application must participate virtually with both audio and video enabled. Andy Ball is the zoning board's attorney. He will advise the board members on matters of law and is the key interface with an applicant's attorney. Mr. Ball does not vote on the applications. Chris Nicola is a city employee and is the zoning board secretary. Mr. Nicola works with applicants on getting their applications together, planning our agendas, and keeping our meeting minutes. Mr. Nicola also does not vote on the applications. Our board consists of 7 regular members and up to 4 alternates. All members can participate in the hearings tonight, but a maximum of 7 can vote. Most applications require a simple majority to be approved. Some applications require 5 affirmative votes to be approved. You'll be told which majority will be required before we begin our deliberations. Mr. Nicola, will you please call the roll of the members?
Yeah, real quick, Mr. Chairman. Andy, would you prefer to do the oath of office first and then roll call, or?
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay.
So Jamie, I will ask you to come off mute. And if you could raise your right hand, please, and then repeat after me. I state your name.
I, Jamie Levine,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and the Constitution of the State of New Jersey,
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same
and to the governments established in the United States and in this state,
and to the governments established in the United States and this state,
under the authority of the people.
under the authority of the people.
I do solemnly swear
I do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully and justly,
Can you please repeat that last line?
that I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
That I will faithfully, impartially, and justly
perform all the duties as a member of the Summit Zoning Board
perform all the duties as a member of the Summit Zoning Board
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
according to the best of my ability, so help me God.
Congratulations and welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome
Mhm.
aboard. I think my marriage vows are shorter than that, but don't tell my
Thank
wife.
you.
that.
Also, just for the
Welcome.
record, Dr. Levine has read the transcripts for 39 Park Avenue and would be eligible to vote if needed.
Right, that's the important stuff. All right, so Mr. Kohler, we'll call then the full roll of the members.
Absolutely. Chairman Spur,
Here.
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Here.
Mr. Yuko is excused, Mr. Steiner,
Here.
Mr. Mullen.
Yes. Here.
Oh, no, that was David Mullen. Sorry.
Okay.
I didn't hear you, Dave. Sorry.
Oh,
Uh-oh.
can't hear you, David.
Oh, hold on.
Sorry, I had the wrong microphone enabled. Here.
Ms. Schwartzstein is excused. Mr. Malay,
Here.
Mr. Loikitz,
Here.
Toth,
Here.
Ms. Stager,
Here.
and Dr. Levine.
Here.
All right, you have a quorum. You can proceed.
All right. We generally hear the cases in the order they are listed on the agenda. We try to have each hearing last no more than 30 minutes, but we do understand that some cases are too complex to be heard within that time frame. Each hearing begins with the applicant or their attorney giving an overview of the application and the variances that are required. We then hear from any expert witnesses the applicant may have to help explain the application and why the variances are needed. The board members may ask questions of the applicant, their attorney, and the expert witnesses. Once the board members and the board professionals are done with their questioning, the public will have an opportunity to ask questions. This is not the time to tell us what you think about this case. That opportunity comes at the end of the hearing. Before you ask your questions, we need to know who you are and where you live. It is important that our court reporter be able to keep a clear and public and accurate public record. Please state your name before speaking or asking a question, and please do not talk over each other. This is even more important under the current circumstances. After all witnesses have been heard, members of the audience have their second opportunity to speak. And at that time, you may express your opinion, positive or negative, about the application. Then the public hearing is closed and we go into executive session where the board members discuss the case and vote. You will be able to listen to our executive session, but you will not normally be able to participate in our discussion. Most applications are heard and decided in the same evening. If a case requires additional information or testimony that cannot be presented tonight, we will carry your case to another date and it will not be decided tonight. Krista Anderson, the city's zoning officer, has asked that I remind all applicants that they must read carefully the resolution that documents the zoning board's decision and to pay particular attention to the conditions contained in the resolution. For example, if a landscaping plan is required, you must obtain one and submit it to John Linson, the city's forester. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all conditions in the resolution will result in a delay in
external microphone to your left.
Well, thank you very much. If a grading plan is required, you must have one prepared by a civil engineer and submit 3 copies along with the application fee to the city's engineering division. Failure to satisfy all conditions in a resolution will result in a delay in approving your application, as it will cause extra work for city zoning staff. The resolutions documenting the board's decision will normally be available 1 month after we decide the case. When I call your name, please tell me how many witnesses you have and whether you think you can complete your case within 30 minutes. This evening on the agenda, we have 3 cases. First, we'll address Beacon Unitarian Church, then Bergen Capital Partners, and then Mr. Sheen will get to you for 39 Park Avenue Builders LLC. So firstly, Beacon Unitarian, Chris, can you just provide a quick update from your conversations with Mr. Maynor?
Yeah, Mr. Maynor has waived the time for the board to act and currently needs more time to work out a solution with the neighbors and Mr. Kronheim. So he's requested to be carried, and the next available date would be June 21st.
And just to be clear, you don't see Mr. Kronheim or Mr. Maynor out there, Chris?
I do not.
Okay. So we'll ask for a motion to carry Beacon Unitarian Church to deep into the depths of summer, June 21st. We have a motion?
Motion to carry.
Thank you. A second?
Second.
Just before you vote, know that I'm off this one.
Oh, thank you, Joe.
All right, but give the second to Scott Loikitz, though. He was the loudest on that one.
All right, fair enough. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Seeing none,
All right.
Steiner is abstained.
Thank you, Mr. Steiner.
And I am an abstention there as well.
Thank you, Claire.
Claire as well. All right. Secondly, Bergen Capital Partners LLC. Chris, you'll remind us about the dance for this one.
Yeah, so at the last meeting, we were carrying them to this meeting so we could figure out the logistics for a special meeting. Those logistics have been figured out, and the date we are going to carry them to is Thursday, April 15th at 7:30 p.m.
Is there any council present out there?
Craig said he was not going to be
Okay.
present.
Okay, so with that, we'll entertain a motion to carry Bergen Capital Partners LLC to April 15th, a special meeting. We have a motion?
So moved.
Second,
Second, Ms. Toth. All
All in
right.
favor?
Aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Seeing none.
All right, excellent. And then just for us to note, we have some resolutions to memorialize, minutes to approve at the close of the session. But with that, we will recognize Mr. Sheehan and the continuation of 39 Park Avenue Builders LLC.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before beginning, may I ask for the privilege of confirming that my witnesses have logged on?
You may.
Is Zach Alberti present?
Oh, sorry, Bart. I'm promoting him now. He'll be there in a second.
Yes, I'm on.
Is William Hollows on?
Yes, I'm on.
Is Chris Simzak on?
Yes, I'm on.
And is John Barry on?
Yes, I am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Our witnesses, or the applicant's witnesses, are confirmed. May I ask the chair to inquire as to whether or not there are any members of the interested public logged on, so that where appropriate, testimony can be directed to properties that they may have concerns from.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. So maybe Chris, can you just remind the interested public, or really anyone participating this evening, how this format works? It differs than our usual Zoom format.
Yes, so when we get to the appropriate time, and Mr. Chairman, I'm sure you will alert the public when we get to public questions of a witness and/or at the end for public comments. But when we get to public questions, when you use the Zoom functions to raise your hand in the webinar format. And once your hand is raised, you'll be acknowledged by me, and then you'll be entitled to ask questions and/or at the public comment section opine on the application. And if anyone, I don't see anyone on the phone, but if they are, you dial *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself.
Okay, so thank you everyone for your patience tonight. I'll be looking to Chris quite often to scan the room, but we'll get it through that way. So Mr. Sheehan, with that, everyone else, if you could just please be muted if you're not speaking, just to help us control any extraneous noise would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. This is the third appearance on this application. First appearance was December 22nd, 2020. Second appearance was February 17th, 2021. And tonight, April 5th, 2021, is hopefully the concluding appearance for this application before the board. At the first meeting, the board heard testimony of Zach Alberti, principal, and a partial presentation by William Hollows as a civil engineer. These presentations described a well-conceived plan to construct 3 two-family homes on problem lots that had long endured in Summit. The project proposed location is in a gentrifying area of East Summit. It was confirmed that there would be no occupancy of the attic areas under the peaked roof included by the architect for aesthetics, with roof pitches consistent with the overwhelming context of the existing Park Avenue neighborhood. At the first meeting in December, 8 pieces of evidence were introduced in the first hearing. At the start of the second hearing, 3 additional evidentiary documents were introduced reflecting a number of revisions with respect to issues highlighted in the administrative reviews. William Hollows concluded his testimony based on the revised civil engineering drawings. Through the chair, if I may, ask the consulting engineer, Mr. Dorr, whether or not there are any issues taken with respect to the revisions under the date of January 26th, 2021.
No, there are not.
Thank you, Mr. Dorr. The architect, Chris Simzak, testified next as to the interior floor plans, the exterior architectural elements, and the calculation of height and floor area ratio based on plan revisions to the roof pitch suggested by Krista Anderson. In her administrative review of that February meeting, Ms. Anderson reserved the right to confirm the FAR calculations once she had received a hard copy of the revised attic plans electronically filed, which were introduced as A12. The architect and the zoning officer have in fact conferred and agreed on the final FAR percentages as reflected in Ms. Anderson's review of March 26, 2021. Tonight, the applicant proposes to present the architect whose presentation was, but for the FAR confirmation, concluded in the last hearing. He will be recalled to formally put under oath the FAR calculations and percentages on the record, and the application will conclude with the testimony of John Barry, the applicant's planner. At this point, I would be happy to try and answer any questions that anybody might have before recalling Chris Simzak to the stand.
Questions from members of the board or our board professionals for Mr. Sheehan? There will be ample opportunity moving forward, but Mr. Millay, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have one. Last time in the meeting, where I inquired by the engineer, I think it was William Hollow, about the number of dry wells underneath the asphalt pavement. And today I would like to know if they have any plan how to clean these, because these dry wells need to be maintained and there must be an access to clean them. That wasn't shown anywhere on the plans.
Mr. Chairman, my audio broke up a bit. Could you rephrase that question?
Okay. The question was to Mr. William Hollow. At that time, I asked how they, I expressed my concern about the number of dry wells underneath the asphalt pavement. And his answer was not to worry because these, are compacted, but they have aggregate layers, so they will not be, can you hear me? So they will not be clogged, but still, dry wells need to be maintained and cleaned from time to time, especially after the 2 years period that the board usually require. So I don't know if there is any plan for that, or we could add this as a condition of approval.
Or Mr. Millay, may I, through the chair, ask Mr. Hollows to unmute himself, and if he understands the question asked. If you could respond to it, please, Mr. Hollows.
Yes, I can respond to that. There would be a manhole cover that would come up to the surface. It's shown on the detail of the dry well, which I believe is on sheet 7. So each dry well that's in pavement area would have a manhole that comes up to the surface. You take the manhole off, you can inspect the dry well, and then somebody could clean it.
And are they 8? I don't recall seeing 8 manhole covers. Are they 8, number 8, or only 3?
I'm
How
sorry,
many manhole
I don't.
How many manhole covers? It seems we have some problem with the audio. Oh, you can hear me?
I can hear you now.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
I'll come
Well,
closer to the microphone.
It varies. We have 3 on lot 16.01, so there'll be 3 manholes, 3 dry wells, 3 manholes.
And how many three manholes?
There's 3 dry wells to be 3 manholes. On lot 15.01, there's 4 dry wells. We'd have to have 4 manhole covers. And then on 17.01, there's 4 dry wells, and we'd have to add the 4 manhole covers.
Oh, they will be.
So you could inspect every one of them.
Okay, thank you. That was my question.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, at this point, the applicant would ask that Chris Simzak, the architect who has previously been sworn and testified in this matter, resume his testimony at this point. I don't think that there is a necessity to have him sworn, but if counsel requests that, he is available.
No, he was previously sworn. He's your witness, counsel.
Thank you. Mr. Simzak, are you aware of the administrative review filed under date of March 26, 2021 by Krista Anderson, the zoning officer of the city of Summit?
Yes, I am aware of that review.
Right. Could you indicate whether or not the floor area ratio percentages for the 3 subject lots presented in that report confirm to your calculations as revised after conferring with Ms. Anderson?
Yes, they are concurrent with hers.
All right, would you, for the record, while under oath, indicate what the percentages are for lot 1501?
The current floor area ratio is 51.75%.
Right now, that is an increase of
1.22%.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to lot 1601.
The floor area ratio for 16.01 is 50.14.
And that is an increase over the calculation that was given last week, last hearing.
1.22%.
Would that perhaps be 1.24, Mr. Simzak?
I don't think so. You know what? It could be.
All right, if I take 48.9 from 50.14, and I'm on very shaky grounds when it comes to mathematics, my calculation
Yes,
came
no.
to 1.24.
You are correct.
All right, and how about for lot 1701?
1701, the current floor area ratio is 50.38.
And the difference in the calculation previously given?
I came up with 1.18.
All right, thank you very much. Now, Mr. Simzak, can you indicate for the board where the extra percent was found in the architectural program for the 3 sites.
Okay. In Ms. Anderson's reading of the definition, she wanted all areas within the outside walls of the house counted as floor area. So my initial calculations added up the floor area for the stairs on the first floor only. It did not double up on the floor area of the stair on the second floor. She wanted that included in the total. So I had to add up the open area for the stairs on the second floor added back into the floor area. So that was the difference from previously to this current calculation.
Right, and if the design incorporating the peaked roof to be consistent with the overwhelming context of the Park Avenue neighborhood were not employed, would it reduce the floor area ratio in a meaningful way?
I would say 1.2 is not a meaningful number.
No. If you did not have any square footage in the attic in excess of 7 feet, and there was no attributable floor area ratio for space or floor area in the attic, have you calculated the reduction would result?
Yes, yes. I have lot 1701 would be reduced to 42.37%. Lot 16.01 would be 43.72%. And lot 15.01 would be 43.52%.
Right now, Mr. Simzak, as an architect, and in evaluating the context of the neighborhood, do you, as an architect, consider the peak roof incorporated in the design an aesthetic benefit to the neighborhood that is consistent with prevailing context?
I feel that it is absolutely mandatory to fit into the neighborhood, to have a peak roof.
Right, Mr. Chairman, I have no further questions of this witness, would submit him to the examination of the board and members of the interested public.
Mr. Sheehan, I'll defer first to our board professionals, Mr. Dower, Mr. Snekis, if you have any questions for the architect.
I have no questions.
No questions on his testimony tonight. Thank you.
I like your guys matching ties tonight, by the way, too.
Did you
Very,
know?
very on message. Anyhow, any questions for the board from the board members this evening for the architect?
And just one quickie. Looking at Mr. Sheehan's letter where he submitted, the square footage numbers are double. Is that just Bart? Do you know why?
I'm not sure what letter you're referring to, Mr. Stein.
March 3rd, 2021. You indicate that it is requested the documents filed in the absence of the attic will confirm the FIR calculations to the architect of 10,785 square feet.
That's the lot area.
Well, he's saying FAR calculation. That's his letter. Should we chalk this up to your mathematical skills here?
The testimony given by the architect, Mr. Steiner, I would submit is the accurate one. And if I have misspoken in my letter by referencing the lot area as the floor area ratio, I extend my apologies.
I'm just trying to figure it out when I looked at them on both together, and I realize that they're slightly apart, the 1.22 or whatever the number was. But then when I look at 5,434 against 10,500, it is a reason to bring up a question. So, okay, we'll take it at that.
Mr. Steiner, any other questions from members of the board? Oh, yep. Mrs. Sager, yep. You can hop off mute. There you go.
I understand we are taking a portion of the attic into the FAR, but I just want to be sure that portion of the attic is not improved area. It's not finished area, correct? And will it be available for storage or anything like that? Just out of curiosity.
It will not be habitable, but I believe, and Mr. Simzak can correct me or not, it would be available for either equipment or low headroom storage.
So it's accessible.
It is accessible, yes, but not habitable. And the applicant has.
Understood.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions from members of the board? Any questions from members of the public? Again, we'll ask you to raise your hand if you are out there for this case, 39 Park Avenue. And just in case anyone else is out there for either Beacon Unitarian Church or Bergen Capital Partners, those cases have been carried. So we're only hearing tonight 39 Park Avenue builders. I don't see any hands raised. Chris, you neither? You don't see anything?
No, I would just remind members of the public that you want to raise your hand with the Zoom features that are on the bottom of your screen. And I currently see none.
Well, if I said something right, the public's jumping off the call. So there we go. All right. With that, Mr. Sheehan, we'll return it back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant requests the testimony of John Barry, a professional planner, to be given in connection with this matter, and that he step forward to be sworn for that purpose.
I'm here, Bart.
All right, if you could please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this matter is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Please state your name, spell your last name for the record.
John Barry, B-A-R-R-E-E.
And would you kindly give the board a quick background on your experience, credentials, and 3 boards that you've recently testified before, aside from Summit?
Sure. I'm a licensed professional planner in New Jersey, have been since 2014. I've also been a member of the American Institute of Certified Planners since that time. I have a Master of City and Regional Planning degree from Rutgers University, and I have regularly represent boards, planning and zoning boards, and I've testified in front of East Newark, East Orange, and Union Township recently, in addition to Summit about a year and a half ago.
And I imagine at this point, the board would like to accept his credentials unless there's any questions.
We would like to accept your credentials. Mr. Sheehan, you may proceed.
Thank you. Mr. Barry, were you retained by the applicant in connection with the application for the development of 39 Park Avenue in the city of Summit?
Yes, I was.
What steps did you take to prepare for your testimony?
I reviewed the engineering and architectural drawings plans for the project. We had several conferences to discuss the vision for the development and how it was proceeding. I conducted a site visit, took pictures, examined the surroundings of the property. I prepared an exhibit that we'll go briefly through with the board, reviewed the city's development review ordinance, reviewed the city's planning documents, master plan, housing element, and fair share plan, and other relevant pieces of background information.
Now, Mr. Barry, you mentioned the photographic survey that you had prepared. Was that previously admitted as A6 in these proceedings?
I believe it was, yes.
All right. Would you give the board and any members of the interested public an overview and context of this application?
Sure. Mr. Nicola, would it be possible to share A6 with the board?
Yeah, are you sharing or do you want me to?
If you can do it, that'd be great, but I can pull it up if you need me to.
All right, hold on.
Okay. Okay, great, thank you. This is a 5-page PDF exhibit that I prepared using Google Earth aerial photos and then photographs that I took of the property and the surroundings. The exhibit is dated December 20th, 2020, I believe. Is that what it says? Yes. And on the first page, this is A6. The first page identifies the subject property, 39 Park Avenue at the corner of Park and Orchard. And we've been orienting ourselves with this lot throughout the proceedings. The proposed lot 1701 is to the left side of the property along Orchard Street. Then 1601 would be the corner lot, and 1501 on Park Avenue. The next page identifies, so it's a little hard to read. It identifies just the house numbers of several of the properties that are shown in the photographs. I've identified just a sampling of the houses in the area for context along Park Avenue and Orchard.
Yeah, excuse me a second, please, Mr. Barry. Your cursor is wandering.
That's me. Sorry, Bart.
Yeah.
Would it be better, John, if you shared the screen?
It may be here. Chris, is that okay?
Yeah, you can share.
Okay. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, here. Okay. Everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. So as I was saying, 39 Park Avenue here at the corner is our property or development site. This next page, page 2 of A6, identifies several houses. We have 23 and 24 Park, 27, 30, 34, and 35. So the odds on the left side of the street, evens on the right side, which I'll show pictures of, just to provide context for the neighborhood. And then moving up around Orchard Street, we have next door 46. Across the street, we have 49 at the corner and 45 at the corner rather, and 49 immediately across the street. And then up around the bend, there's 39-41 is another duplex style. Moving down the street, we have 27 and then 24 and 26. Provide just a smattering of the different architectural types that we see in the neighborhood. Slide 3 shows photos of the site with snow on the ground, so it's been a while, but these are representative of the conditions on the property when I visited on December 9th, 2020. Shows pictures of the property taken from Park Avenue and Orchard Street. The structure that had been on the property was demolished by this time. We see some of the overgrown shrubs, pieces of wooden fence that will be removed as part of this project. And you can kind of make out the bamboo that's been discussed that the applicant is committed to removing as part of the site improvements as well. Looking around from the site at the intersection of Park and Orchard, we've got the 2-story masonry building across Orchard Street with the ground floor commercial uses. There's the pizza place and a few other things. Opposite that, we have the more industrial style masonry building, and then a private vacant lot, parking lot. I understand there's a development application pending on that property as well, I believe. And then moving up the street, so across Orchard, we have 49 Orchard and 45 Orchard, and then next door we have 46 Orchard. So we have a kind of a mix of architectural styles and scales here. 49 Orchard is a multifamily, 45 and 46 are single family. Moving up around the corner on Orchard, we have 39-41 is a multifamily attached, more of a duplex style. 27 Orchard, I believe, has 4 units in it. It's a side-by-side style again. And then you see a little further up Orchard Street, we have some larger full 3-story inhabited multifamily buildings. You'll note on 4 out of the 6 slides here, we see third floor windows that have some evidence of occupancy. You get some air conditioning units in them. So we're looking at dwelling on 3 floors of some of, or not, if not all of these structures. Similarly on Park Avenue, again, the odds are on the same side of the street moving east. We have 35 Park Avenues next door. Again, you can see the air conditioning unit up on the 3rd floor. So you've got 3 floors of habitation here, presumably. 27 Park Avenue, and have a dormer similar style to what we're proposing here in the front porch. 23 Park Avenue, again with the dormer with the air conditioning unit on the 3rd floor and the front porch. And then across the street on the even side, we have some larger dwellings along Park Avenue. Again, the sloped roofs are a common element, a few different pitches, but pretty much every single one of these houses has a sloped roof. Dormers are a common element. So the architectural style of what's being proposed as part of this application is very much consistent with the neighborhood. I'll bring us back here. Okay.
Is it fair to say, Mr. Barry, that peaked roof design is a prevailing design in the neighborhood?
I would say so, absolutely. I didn't show you pictures of every house in the neighborhood, but there's that is the most common architectural element. We have peaked roofs, and most of them do have dormers as well.
So unlike the existing peaked roof structures, the proposed structure has, by consent of the applicant, subject to condition, agreed that there would be no occupancy of the attic area. Is that correct?
Yes, and we just heard Mr. Simzak testify to that effect as well.
All right, can you move into the variances and the relief
Sure.
required, please?
So property is in the R5 zone, as we're acquainted. It's a zone that permits single family homes. It permits a duplex model like we have here. The principal, the largest variance that we're seeking tonight is the D4 floor area ratio variance. Before getting into the specific proofs for the floor area ratio, just outline some of the general site improvements and benefits that are coming about as part of this project. As pointed out in the construction officials review memo, the property that has been, the building that has been demolished had significant code enforcement issues over the years. So we're eliminating those issues, cleaning up the property, new modern development with stormwater management facilities that we've discussed, removal of the invasive bamboo, which was pointed out by the forester and other professional reviews. The proposed mass and design of the structures fits in with the context of the neighborhood. The front porches, the rear yard garages, very much consistent with the style of the different houses in the area. The duplex model has it provides kind of what we call now a missing middle in the housing market. We're not looking at apartments or detached single family homes. It's in between. It provides a nice middle of the road place in the market that has been underserved lately. It's an alternative to a more suburban townhouse model, and I think particularly attractive in the Summit market with the range of housing options. For the D4 variance, the burden of proof is really to demonstrate that the property can accommodate any issues that may be associated with the increase in floor area ratio beyond that which is permitted. These lots are slightly oversized. The inner lots are slightly oversized for the zone. The corner lot slightly undersized, but all above the 10,000 square foot minimum required for a duplex. The proposed units are a modern design, kind of, as I said, they're equivalent to a more modern new construction townhouse. They've got 3 bedrooms. They've got a variety of living space to provide for some of the flexible function that we find we need in our homes these days with working and learning at home. The front porches and the garages detached in the rear, again, consistent with the neighborhood, but also provide an aesthetic benefit, provide ample outdoor space, provide ample space for the storage of vehicles. Now, there's no crowding on these properties. The floor area ratio is really a function of density, and these lots are not going to be overcrowded. There's going to be room both inside and out for ample space for everything. The equivalent, were we to look at this from a different perspective, would be to have 5 single-family lots, perhaps within the same amount of space. That 4 or 5 single-family lots. In my opinion, that would be a less efficient use of the property. By getting the party walls in, we're combining the living space into a more compact form. We're combining curb cuts, we're combining driveways. So rather than having potentially 5 driveways for single-family homes, we're down to 3 driveways that can be shared by the duplexes. And then, as I discussed with the review of the area, the attic space is common for the neighboring properties. That third living floor, that's not something we're proposing. The space counts to the FAR. We don't want to imply otherwise, but if we didn't consider that space, we'd be much closer to conformance, and the variance would be more along the lines of de minimis than the numbers that we're looking at here. So overall, the properties can accommodate a modern new construction design. We've got ample living space indoors and out. We've got the parking that's required on site, and the aesthetic of the project, the architectural decisions that were made to fit in with the character of the neighborhood, to make an attractive project that'll be marketable and also fit in with Summit's high quality and will be attractive to new residents. So as to, before I get into the negative criteria, we have a number of C variances as well to run through. The lot area for the corner lot at 16.01 is 10,549 square feet, where 12,000 is required. The engineering drawings include a survey of 16 lots in the neighborhood, 3 in each direction and across the street. The average lot size is about 8,400 square feet. And so the lot is above average in size for the area. It would be a conforming size were it an interior lot. So overall, it fits in with the typical pattern of development. The lots are all over the place in size. So the 10,549 is certainly above average and fits into the area. So I don't see any detriments associated with that small deviation. We have front yard setback variances. Lot 15.01 requires, all of the lots require 25 feet for the front yard. 15.01 has 20.2 feet. 16.01 has 20.7 feet to Orchard Street and 19.7 feet to Park Avenue. And 17.01 has 16.4 feet to Orchard. What's driving those setback issues is mostly the front porches. The ordinance allows for an exception for certain size front porch. These exceed the square footage limit, so the measurement for the front yard setback is to the edge of the porch rather than to the face of the building. So the decision to provide front porches as a element to fit in with the neighborhood, to be an attractive element, is the main thing driving the front yard setback variance. With that, the average setbacks throughout are really less than what we're proposing here. Some of the lots across the street are within 10 or so feet of Orchard, and moving up Park, most of the houses are in line with what we're proposing or even closer. They're very few conform to the full 25-foot. Side yard setback, there's a variance for the corner lot 1601. There's a 7-foot requirement where we're proposing 5.5 feet to one of the window. There's a bump out window, a bay window style on the side of the house. And there's some testimony about that during the architectural presentation, but the bay window was proposed as a design decision to add to the character of the home, provide a little more usable space, provides additional light to the side of the house. And still the separation between buildings is maintained because there's a larger than required setback on the adjacent property. So you're still getting the 15 feet plus of setback between the buildings. It just happens to be distributed a little more on one lot, a little less on the other. Lot 17.01 requires a combined side yard setback variance. That's the lot on Orchard Street. That lot has a little bit of an irregular shape because of the angle to the side yard. The lot tapers from wider in the front to shallower, narrower in the back. Up toward the front of the house, the setback requirements met, but as it tapers back, it pinches down to 7 feet, which doesn't leave enough space for the combined yard setback, where 27.62 feet is required and only 20 feet is provided. There's the location of that narrower setback area is to the rear of the adjacent structure. So the neighboring lot, the house is pushed up closer to Orchard. So all of this deficiency in the setback is taking place well behind the structure. So there's not a issue of crowding to the neighboring building. The next variance is building coverage. All 3 lots are over 20% is permitted. 15.01 is 33.6, 16.01 is 30.5, 17.01 is 32.7. A portion of that coverage is associated with the garages, with the detached garages, so about 5%. The porches also contribute to that building coverage. So there's area that's coming off the buildings that's not necessarily adding to the dwelling space. All in all, the footprints of the buildings at 24 by 50 for the units they're not an excessive size. They're typical for a new construction for a townhouse kind of model. So we feel that the balance on the balance here, providing for the adequate interior living space and the detached garages and the front porches, offsets the deviation in building coverage. As far as the next variance is lot coverage, the impervious coverage, 45% is permitted. Lot 15.01 is 60.6%. Lot 17.01 is 53.8%. Now, both of those lots, the coverage variance is being driven by the length of the driveways. We have the driveways going back behind the houses to the detached garages. The corner lot, where we don't have as long a run of driveway, is conforming to the lot coverage. So upwards of around or upwards of 20% of the lot coverage on both of those properties is associated with the driveway itself. The trade-off here is that we feel that bringing those driveways around the back so that we don't have a front-facing garage, we don't have the garage being an intrusive visual element from the street, it is a benefit, and that we're providing adequate maneuvering area. I know there was some discussion and testimony about that, but the goal here is to provide the parking, provide the maneuvering space, but also not sacrifice the aesthetic of the property. And it fits in with what we see in the neighborhood. So there's a benefit to that. And then finally, we have a variance for the accessory structure setback for lot 16.01, the corner lot. The garage is required to be set back twice the front yard setback, so a 50-foot setback. It is set back 45 feet from the street. That's a fairly de minimis variance. It's tucked back behind the house by design to as I said, not be intrusive to the streetscape. About a 5-foot setback. It's moving it further back would move it closer to the side property line of the neighboring lot, would probably require a variance for that. So probably the only way we could eliminate that variance would be to attach the garage to the house, which is something that would be out of character with the neighborhood. So that's a summary of all of the variances and some of the specific reasoning behind each of them. Overall, in looking at the benefits versus detriments, the C2 balancing act of these variances, I find that purpose A of zoning is advanced. We're promoting the public health, safety, and general welfare, eliminating some of the property maintenance issues that have been present on this property. We're taking what had been an underutilized lot, is now a vacant lot, and bringing in some new housing, as I said, in that missing middle, bringing new residents to activate that corner, contribute to the local businesses and the fabric of the neighborhood. Advances purpose E to promote the establishment of appropriate population densities and concentrations that will contribute to the well-being of the neighborhood, community, and region. The density is consistent with the R5 zone. It's a housing type that we see in the neighborhood. It's a housing type that I think there's demand for, and it fits in well in the full spectrum of residential units in Summit. G, again, to provide sufficient space and appropriate locations for a variety of residential uses to meet the needs of New Jersey citizens. Same deal. Duplexes are a nice place in the market, and I think a valuable addition. Advances purpose L to provide a desirable visual environment through creative development techniques. I mentioned some of this before, but I think there is real value to the duplex model in combining the driveways rather than having as many curb cuts as you would with more single family structures. We have some really nice design elements here. The front porches are great. They add to the character. Garage is tucked behind, all the things that I've mentioned before. That brings me to the negative criteria. So for both the D4 FAR variance and the C2 bulk variances, there has to be a showing that this relief can be granted without any substantial detriment to the public good. Overall, these lots they fit in well with the neighborhood. They're consistent in size. They're consistent in a lot of respects with the bulk. The massing of the buildings is very typical of what you see in the neighborhood today. Adequate parking on site. There's going to be utilities, new stormwater system. I fail to see any detriments based on the improvements to the property from what was there before and what's there now. And the properties will be able to accommodate the use that's proposed. Then I have to demonstrate that there will be no impairment to the zoning ordinance or master plan. This is a permitted use in the area, so we don't have a heavy burden to overcome with regards to that aspect. Master plan and zoning ordinance both identify this neighborhood as appropriate for duplexes. Preserving the residential neighborhoods and providing for a diversity of housing types is advanced as a goal. We're balancing growth and development within the established pattern and existing infrastructure in the city. We're adaptively reusing an existing lot here. We're supporting the upgrading of a substandard property in the city. We're continuing Summit's tradition of providing for a variety of housing types designed to support and address the needs of a diverse population. And we're encouraging residential development that's compatible with the existing development patterns. So in conclusion, I think that you've heard good testimony from each of the professionals for the applicant's team. The architectural design is a fit for the neighborhood. The floor area ratio variance is driven in part by the aesthetic decisions, and overall the scale and character of the buildings is not out of context with what you see in the market today. And I think it fits in well with the neighborhood and well with Summit. And I don't see any detriments to the area, and think that the board can comfortably grant both the D4 FAR variance and the various C2 bulk variances. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barry. Let's submit him to the examination of the members of the board and interested public, Mr. Chairman.
All right, first up, Mr. Snickis, do you agree?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I believe the applicant's planner has covered all the appropriate proofs that were required for the board. One of the things, though, I just wanted to clarify, and maybe Mr. Sheehan, you may have a thought on this. I believe Krista Anderson identified a variance for combined lot side yard setback for lot 15.01 in addition to 17. Did you concur with that? It's in her February 11th, 2021 memorandum, item number 1. She identified a difference between what was identified in the, I guess, the bulk criteria of the table.
This is the a combined side yard setback
Correct.
created by reason of the location of the garage.
I am not sure. I think it had to do with the measurements combined compared to the lot width itself. Obviously, that's how you get your percentage. And I believe she came up with 32.23% instead of a complying 33%. It's a small amount, but I wanted to identify it. Obviously, if your planner needs to cover that.
Mr. Bart, I think we've got the ability to cover it. There may be a calculation or a rounding issue with one plan or the other, but I think overall sorry, what was the number, Mr. Snake? Is 32 point?
Yeah, she identifies in her memo a variance for the proposed total side yard percentage of 32.23%.
Okay. So we're less than 1% off of what is required. So I would submit that that's a de minimis variance, and that with the context of the project taken as a whole, that the benefits of the project as designed outweigh any detriments associated with that less than 1% deviation.
Okay. With regard to the corner lot condition where 12,000 square feet is required and you're proposing 10,500 square feet, you identified the average or the sizes of I think it was the average of the lots within the neighborhood at around 8,000 square feet. Did you happen to look at the other corner lots and see what their averages are within the neighborhood?
I'm afraid I did not look specifically at the corner lots. Could probably get that fairly quickly if it would be helpful to the board.
I'll leave it to the board if they have a question on that. Usually what we'll look at is when you have that requirement for corner lots, you compare it to other corner lots in the neighborhood. So from your professional opinion, with regard to the corner lot itself, its ability to function, and why is it customarily larger than an interior lot? And if you can offer some testimony regarding that.
Sure. Usually when you have a corner lot, you're dealing with a larger setback to the two frontages. And in this case, we do need relief on that, on the front yard setbacks, but it's a fairly minimal relief, and it's consistent on both frontages, and it's consistent with the other lots in the development. In this case, in certain ways, I feel like the corner lot is able to accommodate the project a little bit better because it has the second frontage where it can bring the driveway in from the side street rather than having the same amount of length of driveway required on the other properties. So while that's not always the case, I think because we're starting from scratch here, I think in some ways the corner lot can handle the project the best of all three.
Okay.
Mr. Snickes?
Yes.
With respect to your question about other corner lots, there would be 3 other corner lots. And if Mr. Barry might reflect on his aerial view, I think he would concur that the corner lot directly across from lot 1601 is in fact a commercial neighborhood business lot with virtually less than 7,000 square feet in it.
Right.
The lot across the street is a vacant lot with a parking lot for the neighborhood functioning on it. And the lot on the southwest corner, if I'm not mistaken, is the old plumbing supply company. And those would be the lots that would be compared to this one.
Okay. I just wanted to bring it up for context and for the record of this application.
Yep.
It's always important to make the record clear as
Good
to its
point.
location and its context. Thank you.
Thank you.
With regard to the mass of the buildings that are being proposed, I know you identified in your testimony, which I thought was appropriate, is the size and configuration of the buildings. And then we look at the negative criteria. Are there any impacts to the intent and purpose of the zone plan? Are you familiar with the design standards in the DRO that were in line with when the application was made at the time? And I don't believe they've changed significantly in this regard, but it talks about scale of neighborhood. And if you can just provide from your professional opinion, just how you feel this meets that scale aspect of the design standards.
Sure. So I don't have them in front of me, and I know they are detailed, but the scale of the building, so we're looking at a 2-story building with an attic with a pitched roof. The sampling of houses that I showed on Exhibit A6 in the photographs that I took in the neighborhood, that's a fairly common design. There are a few different slopes of pitched roof that we see in the neighborhood. Some steeper, more on the lines of the 6-on-12, some a shallower design as well. I think there's not a single preponderant design style, but there are elements consistent throughout that I feel that are captured here in the design that Chris put together. We have the pitched roof, which is an essential element in the neighborhood. We've got the dormer designs that we see a few different models throughout. The overall scale of the building has good balance. As duplexes, there's a little symmetry to them, but they're not identical on each side. Overall, I would say that the massing is not in any way out of character. There are homes on the same block of Park Avenue across the street that have a similarly broad massing to them with the double bays. And then moving up around Orchard, we see several different duplex models that are as wide or wider in terms of the overall scale.
Also, lastly, in your professional opinion, the setback issue relative to, I believe I always get these numbers backwards, I apologize. I think it's lot 17.01. Yeah, that's the one. I think you provided direct testimony on the combined side yard setback, but there you had identified the fact that the building, I believe, is not parallel with the common side lot line with the adjacent home along that property on Orchard Street. And from that standpoint, you're finding that that is one of the factors that helps offset the impact of that variance to the adjacent property owner. Would you concur?
Yeah, I would concur. I was pointing out that was really where that line straight and the lines parallel, then we wouldn't have the issue. It's where it tapers into the back is where the combined side yard setback comes into play. And it's to the rear of the adjacent structure. That point of the proposed house is set back behind the existing house on the neighboring lot.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Mr. Dower, anything you want to add?
I just had 2 questions. If it wasn't providing testimony prior to this, I apologize. Or will these homes have basements?
I would defer to Chris Simzak, but I believe there was testimony that they would have basements. I can't say what the use will be.
Zach Aliberti is here tonight, and he was the one who offered the testimony. Zach, has a determination been made as to whether or not there would or it would not be basements provided in these houses?
Yes, we intended to furnish an unfinished basement and put primarily a mechanical, unit and water heater et cetera down there.
Okay, and the next question is at the other end of the building, the attic access. How do you get up to the attic?
Be a pull down hatch. Chris probably has some design details on it, but that's also for rooftop access, repairs and service, any equipment that's on the roof, but also roofing penetrations, membrane, etc. Pull down hatch would be the best point of access for a maintenance tech.
Okay, thank you. That was the only questions I had, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Dower. Questions from members of the board then for Mr. Barry?
I think, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just jump in because I know there was one question raised in the initial hearing, and I imagine it might still be floating around regarding affordable housing set-asides. And it is something that I had looked into and conferred with the city professionals, and just wanted to chime in to make sure everyone's on the same page. The DRO for its section 35-18 provides the city's affordable housing set-aside requirements, and those apply to multifamily developers. Normally, it's going to be 20% of dwelling units that are proposed would have to be at the affordable level. The key to the application of that ordinance is that it has to apply to multifamily development of 5 or more dwelling units in a multifamily residential development. And the term multifamily is defined in a separate section. It's 35-7.2. And it's a building containing 3 or more dwelling units that share common horizontal separations, including garden apartments. And there's a separate definition for 2-family, which perhaps obviously it's a building on a single lot containing 2 dwelling units. So for that reason here, the affordable housing set-aside requirement does not, it's not triggered by this application. They're all 2-family dwellings. They don't meet the multifamily definition. I also ran that by Ed previously. I also ran it by the city's Affordable Housing Council. All of them had concurred with that conclusion. So I just want to throw that out there, make sure the board is all on the same page.
Thank you for the reminder. Mr. Sheehan, anything you'd like to add to that point? I know it was something that did come up earlier.
I think Mr. Ball has outlined it comprehensively, accurately, and definitively.
That's his middle name: comprehensive, accurate, and definitive. That's right. Thank you, Andy. All right. Any questions from members of the board then for the planner? Okay, hearing and seeing none. Let's just take a, oh, go ahead, Claire. Sorry, I see you waving there. Go for it.
Oh, I am trying to unmute myself. I apologize. The mouse isn't behaving tonight. May I screen share? I've kind of lost track of some of the exhibits, and it might be easier, Chris, if to show you what I'm asking about.
Sure.
Thank you. This baby. This was one of the, I think it was a February exhibit. There's a 13-page document, obviously circling the subject property, and oh, look, there are the corner lots. But along Park Avenue towards Springfield Avenue, we see, you know, all of the neighboring lots, and you've testified that certainly some of them are narrow, they may be smaller in area, but there's an awful lot of unbuilt ground in there. I know this doesn't show all the garages. Have we got any number, any sense of what the floor area ratio or total lot coverage and all are on some of those lots along Park Avenue heading back towards Springfield?
I think that Ms. Toth, that Mr. Hollows and Mr. Barry can answer that, but what is not shown on that plan, as Mr. Hollows can verify, is the driveways and the garages that are separate garages from the houses.
Right,
So,
I noted that in my question.
Bill, if you could begin with the response, please.
I don't really know what the floor area ratio is for,
Well,
for those buildings.
I get you're not going to know that, but sort of what percentage of the property are we taking up versus what you're proposing here? It just seems like there's a lot more grass in those backyards.
Well, those lots are much deeper
Yeah.
than the properties that we're talking about. I think they're a little bit narrower, but deeper, quite a bit deeper. They do have garages and they have driveways that go back to those garages. And I think the houses are set up a little bit differently. Some of them may be a duplex style, and I think that may be more on the other side of Park Avenue. I think these buildings are probably a little narrower, but they're up and down type of two-family, multifamily, and then some single family in there. Does that help, or did I answer the question?
It does. I don't have a professional way to ask this question. It just, they look less squashed.
If I may chime in as well, I'll share my screen with the aerial exhibit because it gives a little bit of more context. This is A6. So these are the lots here that we're referring to, the longer, skinnier ones. As you can see, some of them have substantial structures in the rear yards and much more paving than others. I think the difference here is they extend back to the train tracks. You've got the buffer area built in. There's no question that these are oversized lots in the zone relative to what you see in the more densely clustered pattern throughout the rest of the blocks here. That area along the train tracks that provides that buffer is really the difference. The neighboring lot to our north here is kind of occupying that buffer area. If you drew that line across so that they were more squared off, it would be a much more consistent pattern with these rear yard garages and driveways than what we're proposing and what you see in the rest of the neighborhood. So yeah, some of the lots along Park Avenue, the deeper lots are really the more of an anomaly to the neighborhood itself.
Are those natural covered rear yards visible from the street?
I don't believe so. The houses are up much closer to the street. They're fairly close together along Park. If we see if we can go to page 5. So this is that row 20, 35, 27, 23. You can see little snippets of the green, but then you see the bermed area where the tracks are. So what the aerial doesn't show you is the elevation change. So there's a bit of a hump back there that again, it's a needed buffer to the train tracks, but isn't so much usable yard area. So it's a fairly tight pattern of development along Park Avenue.
But certainly walking up and down the street, you see a reasonable amount of green back there.
I suppose
at the risk of testifying, because, I'm sure we've all walked up and down that street checking it out.
Any other questions from members of the board? All right, Chris, let's take a peek at the public, see if anyone's out there and interested to ask a question of the planner. And again, we'd ask you to just hit that raise hand function on your Zoom application if you're interested. Okay, I don't see any, Chris, nothing from your angle?
No,
all right.
No hands raised, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. With that, Mr. Sheehan, unless you object, let's take maybe a quick 5-minute recess. Let Michelle stretch her fingers and then return to your case.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. 5 minutes, everyone. All right, we'll just welcome a few more board members back and then we can kick off. Chris, all right. Welcome back. Michelle, you're good?
Yep, we're good to go.
All right. Mr. Sheehan, if you would resume your application. Hop off mute would be helpful. You're on mute, Mr. Sheehan. Yep.
All right, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, that is the applicant's case. It has been presented thoroughly. It is a case which describes the repurposing of a lot that was a functional and aesthetic problem featured as a concrete construction site and yard and residence. It contributes to a variety of moderate income housing, and it is consistent and completely in keeping with the emerging East Summit's regentrification. In fact, if you do walk Park Avenue in that area, what is visually more apparent than the deep, undeveloped portions of rear yards to the north are the quasi-industrial uses in the nearer portions of many of the yards that are currently in existence. Ultimately, these houses will be the subject of similar rehabilitation, and it is hoped that the rehabilitation that is enjoyed in that area with those houses is consistent with the proposal that you have before you. It is a proposal in which the mass is not offensive from the street. It relates well to the mass of adjoining properties to the north and to the east. It has a comparable FAR to properties to the east. It promotes a desirable visual environment and has a quality community design. It fosters the objectives of the master plan and the 2016 reexamination report as specified in the direct testimony by John Barry, the planner for the applicant. It is an application which has a variety and number of variances that are consistent with the development of East Summit on a more dense basis than the zone itself permits. And yet, having said that, it is a proposal which is completely consistent with the existing context and one which promotes the energy of the evolving context. I commend the application to the board's favorable review based on the comprehensive planning testimony and the colloquy between John Barry and Mr. Stichus. The engineering administrative reviews have been incorporated in revised design to minimize the dimensional variances required, all of which can be justified under the C2 standard that benefits community without substantial impairment to the intent and purpose of the zone plan and without any arguable substantial detriment to the public good. This project, if developed, will promote the public good and foster the intent and purpose of the zone plan and master plan. And I commend it to your favorable review. Thank you very much for your patience over these several hearings. And this is an application which is one which is self-promoting, in my uninformed opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Before we do proceed to board deliberations, we wanted to provide the public with an opportunity to comment in favor or against. Chris, I understand you did receive one letter from a neighbor.
Yes, we do have one letter to read in the record. I guess, do we want to see if any other members that are in attendance want to go first before we read it, or do you want to read it first?
Well, let's read it first, and in the meantime, they can figure out how to raise their hands. So just a reminder, if you do plan to speak as a member of the interested public, we'll need you to use the raise hand function on the Zoom platform, and we'll call on you by name and welcome you to provide comment. Go for it, Chris.
Just Chris, before you do, this is also just a reminder for the board that this letter, we're required to hear any written submissions per the DCA's regulations, but it's not to be considered testimonial. While it may prompt additional questions or additional comments from anybody else who's present, it should not be factored in as fact in your final decisions here.
Okay, this is from Valerie Melny of 46 Orchard Street. Dear zoning board, my family has lived in this house since 1930, and I am fourth generation to live in East Summit. I am very concerned about the construction that is to occur at 39 Park Ave, which is next to my property. The builder is trying to relocate the lots and is asking for about a dozen changes to the DRO. This is very extensive. Why wouldn't he use the lots as they exist now? Instead of 3 gigantic 2-family homes, 3 detached garages, and trying to change so many variances, he should just put up 2 or 3 homes on Park Avenue as the lots exist now. There's not enough room for what he plans to do. Houses on Park Avenue and Orchard Street are half the size. These new houses won't fit in with the neighborhood. There's a reason we have strict requirements of the DRO, and this is it. There is also a flooding issue off of the elevated train tracks with heavy rain that flows through the backyards into the front yards and down Park Ave. Will only increase with all of that construction. I would have liked to have spoken to the builder, but he never contacted me back. Many neighbors are not happy, but they are unable to Zoom, so their opinions won't be heard. I hope the board seriously takes the neighbors, neighborhood, and the requirements of the DRO into consideration on this decision. Thank you for your time.
What is the address of that property owner, please, Chris?
46 Orchard Street.
What block and lot?
I don't have it in front of me. I might be able to pull it up quickly.
Well, do you have the name?
Yes, Valerie Melny.
It's lot 8. It's lot 18.
So I did receive a letter from this property owner. If that's of any relevance, you'd like me to mention.
Mr. Doer, if I may, is that lot 40318 or 402? 40218. I see. Does Mrs. Melny realize that she has a front yard setback from Orchard Street that probably, at least according to the tax map, would appear to be less than 5 feet at one corner? Mr. Hollows, do you agree with that assessment?
Yes, I do.
And does Mrs. Melny realize that she has a rear yard garage with a driveway to it that sits exactly on the property line? Would you agree with that, Mr. Hollows?
Yes, I would.
And what does that have to do with her comments? She made her comments. Let's hear the rest of the comments, please.
Any further, items rather than just reaffirming the composition of our lot? Mr. Sheehan, anything further you'd like to address, reminding us of Mr. Ball's instruction that this was not testimonial. This was a letter just simply written into the record. So anything else
Well,
you'd like to address to those points?
I think as an unsworn statement that is not subject to cross-examination, it is worth taking note of the fact that there are a number of nonconformities on Lot 18 that are not dissimilar from the variances requested that Mrs. Melny is complaining about. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sheehan. Any other comment from the public? I don't see any hands raised. Chris, you don't either?
Do not either, Mr. Chairman.
Again, we'll offer the public one more opportunity to press that raise hand function, or what was the *79? What is it, Chris, on the telephone?
Well, that would apply to people on the phone that are dialing in, but I don't see any attendees at that point. So any members in the public that are logging in and using video or anything like that, they want to hit the button on the bottom of the screen that will say raise hand.
Okay, I don't see any members of the interested public here to provide comments. With that, Mr. Sheehan, anything further you'd like to add before the board moves into deliberations?
I have nothing further to add to what's already been said.
Thank you very much. All right, Mr. Ball, would you remind us of any and all conditions that have been attached over the process of these hearings?
I can, and there's quite a few of them. First, I just want to note there were 2 conditions that were noted in prior testimony that, based on the updated plans, it appears they're no longer applicable. One was that the applicants would meet the updated roof line requirements proposed by the zoning officer. They have done that, so I'm not going to impose that as a condition. The other one was that the applicants were to construct a sidewalk along Park Avenue and Orchard Street. Again, that's been incorporated into the updated plans, so is no longer necessary. The remaining conditions that I have are as follows. First is the usual compliance with all the conditions noted in the engineer's report. Second is that the attic area will not be habitable in any of the 3 units. Third is that the applicant is to submit a landscape plan for the city forester's review and approval. Next is that the applicant is to connect applicant is to connect 6-inch water main for the house and hydrant in accordance with the fire chief's request. Next is that the applicant shall comply with the requests in the city forester's report. Next is the dry wells are to comply with HS loading requirements noted in the engineer's report. Updated plans will reflect the same. Following is applicant to submit updated plans to confirm compliance with conditions 19 and 20 in the engineer's report, although I'm not sure, and we'll just ask to double check if that's still necessary in light of the updated plans. And while that's being checked on, the final condition that I'll note is that the board will retain drainage jurisdiction for 2 years.
A question on points 19 and 20 of the engineer's report.
That was regarding the location of the air conditioning units that they and any generators if proposed are going to comply with the ordinance. That's number 19. Number 20 is providing a stabilized construction access detail.
Are acceptable.
Okay. And I think when we come, if this application is to be approved, there are maybe a few instances of some subtle redundancy. I think there's 2 references to the forester's conditions where, for example, submission and acceptance of a landscaping plan may consume both of those, but that's kind of cleanup, if anything, as part of a resolution process. Mr. Sheehan, any other thing you'd like to highlight, or just to make sure you are, before we jump into deliberations?
I had a question on conditions.
Yeah, please, Mr. Moore.
And this may not be relevant or permissible, but we have a pending application catty corner to this one. And I would imagine staging of construction would be a concern if both applications were to be approved. And I don't know the timing of either applicant's construction, but I think we have to figure out a way to consider that either in this application, the other one, or both.
I was thinking that too.
Perhaps a construction phasing and staging plan would be required prior to the issuance of any building permit.
I'll defer to Mr. Ball on that one.
That sounds perfect to me, unless anyone from the board has any concerns with it as exactly phrased by Mr. Sheehan.
Mr. Dower, you have any opinion on that? Knowing that the application Mr. Mullen is referencing is not yet decided, but yes, it is foreseeable that these two applications could be under construction an overlapping time period.
I would just say they've got to coordinate it with the city and the police department. So with city engineering and the police department, because they would pretty much dictate hours of operation and also any type of truck access. And if there's any conflicts, then they're going to have to mediate that.
I think we had language the last time with one of the residential properties that probably fits here as well.
Do you remember which case that was, Mr. Steiner?
Not off the top of my head. I remember it's a very narrow street and they could only park on one side. I remember all of that, but I can't tell you where.
That's Crest Acres.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll leave that to Andy and his wordsmithery to figure that out. So, okay. I think that's Yep. Go ahead, Liz. Yep.
You know, Mr. Alberti had, I guess he was going to say something about the connecting with the neighbors. Can you just finish your sentence?
Oh, I was just going to suggest that for logistics purposes, it's usually best to load on the largest frontage that you have to your site. And for us, that's on Orchard, whereas for the adjacent parcel, it's on Park. So presumably you could have trucks loading and unloading on Orchard. And there's a driveway for the garage on the corner lot right there. And the garages will likely be constructed, last. We'll probably pour all the foundations at the same time, but it gives you easy rear yard loading and unloading off of Orchard, and then plenty of access on and off of Park. If I was just gonna,
I wasn't talking about that. When they're reading a letter from the neighbor, you said that they contacted you.
Oh, yeah. I did receive a letter from them, but the letter was just inquiring on whether or not they could acquire a portion of our site that was along their driveway because they wanted to expand their lot size and expand their garage and driveway. But I didn't know how our hearings would go, so I didn't really have an appropriate answer for them. So I was planning, frankly, my note, I still have the letter in my to-do list, but my note was back in December, at our first hearing to send them a response. And then since it's dragged out to the third hearing now, it is quite truant for me to send a response, but I just wanted to wait until we got a result from our hearing tonight.
All right, with that, let's enter into our deliberations. We've heard the conditions. Who would like to kick us off? I'm going to look to Mr. Mullen today. He seems like he's got an extra pep in his step. How are you feeling,
Mr.
David?
Steiner raising his hand, so.
Oh, okay. Well, if he's raising his hand, yeah,
Well,
please.
I'll tell you that I'm going to need help from my board members. I am really conflicted on this one. The word that's been used here is gentrification, which usually means update, upgrade, all those wonderful terms and terminology. And here we seem to be putting in the exact same housing that we have already all over the neighborhood, and we're not upgrading much as far as size, et cetera. So I'm going to have to hear from my other board members where they come down on what seems to me may be considered too much in this very small piece of property.
Well, Joe, the word gentrification gotten my attention as well. And I was thinking about the sort of negative implications of that word. So I prefer not to use that word when describing this application, just because I actually do think this is an improvement on a lot that's otherwise, deteriorating right now. I mean, we've driven by it. It's an underutilized lot. So I think what you're going to put in here is modern housing that's going to be up to a very high standard, which I view as a positive to the neighborhood. I was concerned initially with this application when I saw all the variances that were requested. Are we trying to stuff 10 pounds of dirt into a 5-pound bag? And I was skeptical, but through the multiple hearings of testimony and kind of seeing the refinements made to the plans, I feel like it may be a little denser than I would have drawn up on the board, but on balance, I think this is going to be a positive to the neighborhood. And that's why I'm going to support the application.
I'm going to go to Liz. I want a local's opinion on this. You know this area well, so what do you think?
I do. Being a Park Avenue, I was raised on Park Avenue, and I have a property a couple of blocks down to there on John Street. One, I think it's going to be a wonderful improvement to that area. I know that house very well. I knew the family very well, and the property is very large. It is for the 2-family. I think that's a better alternative than a couple single families. I think that area, that's what they have. They have 2 families. We approved 1, 4, and 6 Park Avenue, just down the street there on Springfield Avenue. And, it's going to be a nice improvement. That's what it needs. I think it's an update for East Summit. And most of the houses look about the same. They have the backyards, they have a bunch of things. So I will definitely approve this application because I think it's going to be a great improvement for Park Avenue.
Ms. Toth?
I am bothered a lot by this one. I sort of began with Mr. Mullen that we're putting 10 pounds of dirt in a 5-pound bag. You may have gotten me down to 8 pounds of dirt. But I'll bring back the whole affordable housing thing, that this is a potential overlay zone. And I won't get the name of the document right, but the affordable housing agreement suggests that possibly as many as 9 affordable units to go in this lot, which would make it even denser. I get it. But the idea that the applicant is created a proposed development that requires 0 affordable units bothers me a lot, particularly when they talk about how they're appealing to more moderate incomes. So it's sort of like they want it, but they don't want it. And I haven't seen that the benefits outweigh that detriment.
Yeah, Ms. Sager, go ahead.
I have to say that I'm in favor of the application. I think that just about every single one of the variances that's requested can be explained for an aesthetic reason that makes the project much more attractive for the neighborhood and delivers a more improved product to the neighborhood. I am bothered by the affordable housing thing, because I do think that they seem to be kind of escaping any kind of an obligation through a technicality, because this is technically 3 lots instead of 1 lot. They don't have to make any kind of a contribution. So that does bother me a little bit. So that's the only thing that gives me a little bit of a pause, but I do think that it is a good development for this piece of property.
Mr. Steiner, is this swaying answering any of your questions or swaying you?
One question that comes up from this is this not a minor subdivision as well? Aren't we splitting these lots? These aren't 3 lots now, are they?
I believe they are. They were 3 long, narrow lots that are now being reconformed to be 3
Reconfigured,
more
okay.
squared off lots.
Because if it was 1, or we denied the subdivision, there'd be 3 lots. There'd be 1 lot, or well, I guess there wouldn't be 1 lot. All right, I'm still on the fence, guys.
All right, Mr. Lukitz, bring Joe over one side or the other. Scott, what can you do for us here? Calling you out. Oh, hop off there, Scott. Come on. Well, were you avoiding me, Scott? All right. I'll leave him there. Oh, you can't? Okay. All right. Technical difficulties. Fair enough. Anyone else? Jamie, no pressure to chime in here on your first meeting. Anyone else like to say anything? Mr. Millay, anything you'd like to address?
I am on the edge, but I am in favor of this application. I think it is a good idea. The design and the only problem is the FAR. It's a little bit excessive. However, it's as was mentioned before, it's better. So I think the advantages outweigh the negative points, and I would support it.
Thank you, Mr. Millay. I'll weigh in and just say that I could support this application. When I look at the goals outlined specifically in the master plan about maintaining a dynamic and vibrant city, building economic resiliency, whether we like it or not, this board may become the board that does really uplift this portion of our community through a number of different applications. And this one I think is a net positive improvement. And some of the concerns we have around affordable housing and density, those are the very issues we're trying to tackle and weigh the positives and negative criteria for. And at least what I see here over the course of these 3 hearings is something that I could support. So barring any other comments, Scott, I saw you hopped off there. If you want to say anything, you're welcome to it, but otherwise you can just nod along.
No, I agree with you, Steve. I think it's a great proposal. They've done a lot with a pretty tight corner of the neighborhood. I think the scale, the density, the architectural design, it all makes sense. They varied the components to make it not look too bulky. There's some variety within the buildings, but yet they all stick to a common theme. I really appreciate the effort that the architect went through to try and accomplish that, which is not always easy. So all in all, I would be in favor of this application. I think they've done a great job.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Lukitz. With that, I will entertain a motion to approve the application with the conditions as outlined earlier. We have a motion?
Motion to approve.
A second?
Second.
Second.
All right, we'll give it to Scott. I think it was a little quicker.
Sorry, Diana.
We need buzzers.
All right, Chris, will you give us the roll call, please?
Vice Chairwoman Newell,
Yes.
Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Millay,
Yes.
Mr. Lukitz,
Yes.
Ms. Toth,
No.
and Chairman Spur.
Yes. All right. Thank you, Mr. Sheehan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
All right. And everyone hang in here except for the applicants. They can jump. We have a little bit of housekeeping to do. Chris, if you'll walk us through that.
Sure. We have 4 resolutions and a set of minutes to approve. First resolution is 61 Woodland Avenue, application ZB 20-2037. Eligible voting members are Mr. Steiner, Mr. Mullen, Mr. Malay, Mr. Loikitz, and Ms. Knoll. Would somebody like to move that?
Steiner moves approval.
Second,
All right, Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz,
Yes.
and Vice Chairwoman Knoll.
yes,
All right, next is 39 Clark Street, application ZB 20-2038. Eligible voting members are Mr. Steiner, Mr. Mullen, Mr. Malay, Mr. Loikitz, and Vice Chairwoman Knoll.
Motion to approve.
second,
All right, Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz,
Yes.
and Vice Chairwoman Knoll.
yes,
Next is Fort Club Drive, application ZB 20-2039. Eligible voting members are Mr. Steiner, Mr. Mullen, Mr. Malay, Mr. Loikitz, and Vice Chairwoman Knoll. And same thing, we need a motion.
Steiner moves.
Second.
All right, Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz,
Yes.
and Vice Chairwoman Knoll.
yes,
Okay, and our last resolution is 4 Evergreen Road, application ZB 21-2040. Eligible voting members are Mr. Steiner, Mr. Mullen, Mr. Malay, Mr. Loikitz, and Vice Chairwoman Knoll. And we need a motion to approve.
So moved.
second,
All right, Mr. Steiner,
Yes.
Mr. Mullen,
Yes.
Mr. Malay,
Yes.
Mr. Loikitz,
Yes.
and Vice Chairwoman Knoll.
yes,
All right, and set of minutes from March 1st, 2021. Who would like to move those?
So moved.
Second.
In favor?
Aye.
aye,
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. Aye.
All right, seeing none.
It's what happens when it was on mute.
And quickly before we do adjourn, Chris and I discussed, and we made a bit of an executive decision, the August 16th meeting. We're planning to, we'll say cancel it. We're going to give you a little bit of a summer break. So plan your vacations now for the end of August. And if you didn't check in with us before, well, tough luck. But the August 16th meeting is planned to be canceled, and we're not scheduling any cases for that. So just so you can make note on your calendars.
Where are you going, Chris?
Hey, I'm not going anywhere. Where are you going?
All right. With that, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for a good evening. Good night.
Good night.
Everyone.
Good night, everybody.
Night now.
Good night. Thank you.